Hello and welcome back to Mother Tongue, your eyes, ears and finger on the pulse for all parents around the world. Let's get going, shall we?
So we're back again, episode 3, and actually this one I am so excited and intrigued about, especially knowing your current situation and what you're looking to do in the future. I feel like I've got so many questions. Anyway, guys, you probably didn't guess it, but today we're talking about accommodation and how to find accommodation, because I feel like this is such a loaded question, which is so hard to answer because it's not quite as... Not that Dubai is straightforward, but it's not as straightforward, and you've got so many options for people living in Saudi. And I want to start really by asking, where do most people live when they're relocating? It's compound life, isn't it? Can you just talk me through compound life a little bit?
The first thing I would say is you're really excited about this conversation. I'm really scared because I am so oblivious when it comes to like this side of it. Like I feel it's a real blue job in my world. Like Michael is so good at like all things where we are going to be. So when I first moved here, for example, I just said to him, find us a villa. I don't need to know where. I didn't know anything about anything. I was like, just tell me where I'm living. So he sort of sorted that out, and then I just moved in. And even with this one we're in now, I hadn't seen it. I just said, I'm really, unless we're buying something, then I'm like the polar opposite. Then I'm like, I want to know everything. Whereas because when it's rentals, I just feel so unconnected to it.
Yeah.
I'm like, I just need to know it's got this many bedrooms and the kids will be fine. But anyway, so we live in a compound, which you just visit me in my compound. Was it what you expected?
Do you know what? It was and it wasn't. It was much bigger than I thought it was going to be, because we have in Dubai, we have compounds, but they're not compounds like Saudi has compounds. I mean, ours are like areas, I would say. They're like gated communities, but I feel like the Saudi compounds are a new level of gated. I mean, it was like Fort Knox trying to get in there. I had to send my passport over before arriving. It was, I mean, great from a security standpoint. Not that I think you need it in Saudi, because obviously everything is so safe, I'm guessing, like it is in Dubai.
Safe.
But they were much bigger, and you have so much more in your compound than we do in our communities in Dubai.
Yeah, it's funny, isn't it? Because when I first moved here, it was so much harder to get into a compound. Imagine. So it's hard when you came, but when I moved here, it was double security. So there was a main gate, then there was a short drive, then there was another main gate, then you could get into the compound. Because back in the day, there was a risk, a security risk for expats living here. So I totally get that. Whereas, again, the shift and the changes we've seen of moving here, it's no longer a concern. So they've taken them all down. So you still now have one security point, which I think is such a luxury, because now when I come back to England, so I'm in my house in England, I'm like, hang on, what? Where's the security guard? Like, who's going to look after me?
Yes.
So I absolutely love that we have that here. But yeah, so these compounds are across all of Saudi. They've got them in Jeddah, they've got them here. In Khobar. So they're these predominantly expat communities. Again, historically, it was very much that expats would be in compounds, Saudis would be outside. Now, Saudis live in compounds as well, and expats live outside the compound, so very much mingled. So it really is a choice now. So you can either be in a compound where you pay a premium to live within the gated community, to have effectively, I always say this, like a UK David Lloyd on site. That's what it feels like. So in the middle of our compound, we've got a gym, a cinema, a restaurant, a big pool, a bowling alley, sports courts, all within this little place in the middle of the compound. It's quite big, it's not little. Like tennis courts, everything's all there. Then you have the villas, and then you have these sub pools, the satellite pools, which are near your villa, so they're more like a private pool. So that's really what it's like. Or it's a bit like if you're in Dubai, like you live in the Westin. That's what it feels like. Like you've got some of them have got big slides, like big activity places. You've got multiple restaurants in some of the compounds. So it just feels like you live in a resort.
I love this. And I
Yeah.
remember you also saying one of the things, it really stuck with me actually. One of the things that you actually quite liked is that all the houses were the same, basically,
I
in the
love
compound.
it.
So there was no like this whole keeping up with the Joneses. Everyone was kind of living the same life, had the same space, and it meant you could just kind of chill out when it came to that whole side of things.
Yeah, it's funny because in Dubai, obviously, there is such a keeping up with the Joneses.
Sure.
Whereas here, yeah, that's eliminated because we all have the same houses pretty much. We all pretty much pay the same rent within the compounds. And also, the only thing, and also we joke about the cars. If you buy a nice car here, you're a little bit of an idiot because it is so wild on the roads. The last thing you want to do is be driving around in your super fancy pants car. So I feel like there's just none of that keeping up with the Joneses, none of that like pretentious vibes. Everyone's on the same level. And I just love that. I think that's so
Yeah.
great and refreshing.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. I think there is something really, really lovely about that. And I mean,
Yeah.
you said that everyone pays the same rent. So who
Mm.
owns these compounds that you all live in?
So Saudis own the compounds, predominantly. And then some businesses will put you in a compound. So when you move over, they might have an agreement with a certain compound that all their employees go there. Some people are paid for. So we talked about this before, you and I. So back in the day in Dubai, you would get packages. Okay, yeah. So a lot of the companies here will cover and put you in a compound. So we were saying before in Dubai, you would have these packages when you were relocated from England, for example, and they
Yeah.
would pay your rent, they would pay your schooling, they would pay for all of the kind of big chunk things to get you over here. And that still happens here in some businesses. So they might choose your compound for you. Otherwise, it's you trying to find your own compound. And that is so difficult because you have no idea. So the best thing to do is come over, or your husband come over, whoever can, and to literally run around them all to try and work out which is the best fit for your family. We've lived on two. So we lived on Arizona, which my husband originally found. And he very cleverly put us in a compound with a golf course. I was like, that's genius. So he did that. And then we moved into Wadi Qurtuba, which he absolutely love. It's huge, which is the one you visited. Um, and really, really love it here. So yeah, and then you're paying, like I say, for the premium of being on a compound. And then a lot of our friends are now starting to move off compound, which is about half the price, which again, historically probably wouldn't have happened. Whereas now, obviously everyone's so mixed and, embracing that we feel more than confident to live off the compounds now.
So when it comes to talking about compounds, when it comes to finding a compound, I remember you mentioned that your old compound might have not been in the best location for all the things that you personally, as a British expat, wanted to be close to. Are there what would you say the most popular expat compound areas, so people might be able to like whittle them down, and why they're the most popular? Is it because they're closer to schools or malls or just more central?
Yeah, it's really schooling, I'd say, is the biggest one, or your work, because they're the two things that you obviously have to drive to in the day. So there's an area called Qurtuba, which is where most of the compounds are, which is where we are now. And they're all much and much around each other, like within 5, 10 minutes of each other. And they're all quite near the British school, or the American school, which historically were the only kind of big schools that everyone went to, whereas now schools are popping up all the time. And so for us, it's about being close to them because the traffic is so difficult here, although the metro launched yesterday, which is very
Oh,
exciting.
wow.
It was really funny. So last night, the roads were horrendous. So I had 3 events I had to get around, and it took me an hour to get to each event, and I couldn't get my head around why. And it transpired MBS was going on the metro. So all of the roads were blocked off, which is hilarious. So I couldn't get anywhere, but he was going around on the metro. So that launched, and actually a lot of my husband's colleagues were trying to get on the metro yesterday. It was a very exciting moment. So I think that will
Wow.
change the traffic here. But yeah, I feel like when you're looking for your compound, it's good to think about where is close to your work and where is close to your schools.
Okay. And I mean, you said that there are lots of compounds to choose from.
Mm.
Are there compounds that have more Saudis living in them, for example, or maybe more Indians versus more British? Like,
Mm.
are there some that, for British expats who are moving over, are there some that are more British than others? Or is there, in general, are they all quite mixed?
So mixed, so
I
mixed.
love
Like,
that.
yeah, it's so lovely. Like, so for example, I'm in a corner in my compound, and the whole strip next to me is all Lebanese and Palestinians. And when they invite me over, and I went over for coffee not so long ago, and we were just talking about their culture and their lives, and it was just such a lovely experience. And again, I wouldn't have that exposure to different cultures and nationalities if I didn't live where I live.
Yeah.
So some of my best friends here are Australian, New Zealand, British. We've just got so many different cultures and nationalities. It's brilliant.
I love that.
Mm.
And then I want to talk about the cost because, again, actually, maybe not so much compared to Dubai anymore, but the general rule of thumb has always been that renting is more expensive in Saudi than it is in Dubai. What are we kind of talking price range
Mm.
for, a 3-bed, for example?
I think it's probably on par with Dubai now, to be honest. But I wouldn't know. We'll have to have a chat now to understand. But we have a 4-bed. Yeah, 4-bed. And I actually don't know how much we pay, which isn't very helpful. But I know it's between 250 and 300,000 a year.
Yeah.
SAR is the same as dirham. It's somewhere between there. So I would say, is that similar to what would be paid in Dubai? I feel like for a big villa in Jumeirah Islands or somewhere, you would be paying about that, no?
Yeah, probably. That is probably what
Yeah,
it's going for now. It depends on the area. I mean, the prices have gone a bit crazy here. But
yeah.
then no, that sounds right about right. And then in terms of like the checks and stuff, do you have a similar system with checks? Because for example, in Dubai, notoriously, you either had to pay for a year up front, or you had oh you've you've gone. Oh, you're back. You typically had to pay for a year
Hello?
up front. And then when it comes to paying for them, I know that back in the day in Dubai, for example, it's changed a little bit now, but you had to pay a year up front or at least every quarter or every 6 months. Is that very similar in Saudi or can you pay monthly?
Yeah, so you cannot pay monthly. You have to pay in bulk sums. So whether that's a year or every 6 months, but I think most places are a year. You can, from some companies, get rent advance. So they'll help cover it and then
Yeah.
you give them that money back. So there's definitely, again, like the support in that. Because I remember exactly when we first moved to Dubai thinking, how on earth are we going to pay a year up front? That's crazy. We don't even know if we're going to be here a year.
Yeah.
Whereas now it's just the norm that's just the way the Middle East is. So yeah, you can. And then if you wanted to get out of a contract, there is obviously fines and different elements that you'd have to deal with, but you can get out if you need to.
And what about finding this accommodation? Because obviously the whole of Dubai is like run on estate agent life. Are
Mm.
there estate agents in Saudi? Like, how do you go about finding somewhere to live?
So in the compounds, it's just literally a case of listening to podcasts like this, or I have a podcast called Saudi Life Unpacked, which is all about moving to Saudi and unpacking your life here and what it's like to be here, obviously being here so long. And on there, we've got, for example, on our Instagram, we've got the top 5 compounds for you to click through. Because again, like when we first moved here, there was nowhere to see that, like just an Instagram to click on to be like, where can we live?
Yeah.
So we've listed those out. And then for outside of the compound, there is an app, but it's in Arabic. So I actually don't know what it's called, but again, we can put it in the show notes. Um, and that's how people tend to find their accommodation if they're looking for an apartment. But there's areas like, for example, there's CAFT, which has which is our DIFC, has these amazing apartments that you could rent and go and have a look at, and it's very DIFC vibe.
Love this.
So there's places like that, yeah, that you could look into as well.
And so it just estate agents just not exist in Saudi at the moment.
Well, I've driven past offices that say like Saudi real estate, and you would not go in there ever. I'm telling you.
Okay, so
So
it is
yeah,
down
I
to
think
you really to broker the deal and stuff.
yeah, for sure, for sure. Yeah, all through this app. And again, if you're going off compound, I think you would probably need an Arabic speaker to help you, just
Okay.
because you just want to make sure you weren't getting stung or there was nothing that you'd kind of missed. So I think that's one of the massive eases of the compound. It's very straightforward. I would say if you're moving to Saudi, start in a compound, build
Yeah.
that community, build the security of knowing what it's like to be here, and then look at moving off when you want to start saving the cash. But for the initial hit, I would move on to compound.
And so again, this sounds really stupid, but for the application process to get into a compound, is it kind of like being in one of those bougie buildings in New York where you have to like apply and then get approved to move into the compound? Do they vet you all, or is it much more simple of there's availability, you can move in, it doesn't matter who you are?
So, for example, my compound, Woody Quarterby, there's a 1 year waiting list, imagine. So, I would say it's more if you can be lucky. So, I always give the people the advice that if you're coming here and you know you're moving here, go to the compounds and say, look, literally, I've got the cash, sign me up today. This is where, because if you add yourself to the waiting list, I swear you'll just get bumped out of this. Not very organized. Like if someone else comes in and they are more pushy or more bolshy, they might get it. So I would just say, come, sort it all out when you're here, sign a contract while you're here. Because if you try and do it all remotely and you're trying to get on waiting lists, or you're trying to organize even a walk round, more
Yeah.
often than not, no one will come back to you.
Oh my God. Wow. Wow.
Yeah, it's very, I
Okay.
thought it's like the inshallah way of life. Like, it's like, oh, you'll be fine. You'll find somewhere to live. I'm like, but what? Where are we living?
Yeah, it kind of if I feel like sometimes it's like that in Dubai, the whole kind of face-to-face communication is still very much a vital part of Middle
Yeah,
Eastern life. Like I think that people respond to people much better when they see them in the flesh as opposed to
yeah.
just dealing with someone over email or over the phone.
And even in Dubai, I remember 11 years ago, my husband walking what was very small at the time, JVC,
Yeah.
walking round in his suit, sweating because it's like the middle of summer, and knocking on like apartment areas or blocks to be like, anyone, can you just show me a place to live? And it is like that, isn't it? You kind of
Yeah.
just have to muddle through. And that's still what it feels like here, like finding the compounds, showing up and being like, look, we're willing to move in. Here's the deposit. Here's the full year, whatever you need to do to get it. And then you're in.
And then in terms of like, I mean, you mentioned this in our first episode that most things are furnished. Is
Mhm.
that the case for most of the compounds in Saudi?
Yeah.
Most of them come fully furnished.
Yeah, they're all furnished. And honestly, some of the villas are so dark. Some of the villas are something out of the 1920s. Like, there's some really interesting styles. The Wadi Portable ones are very new. They're very big window, because for me, it's windows.
Yeah, it's
I'm a
light.
real window person. Yeah, I need the light. So I would always advise to like walk around and have a little look at what you'd need. And then furnishings, again, questionable. Like, I don't think I've had a like comfortable sofa for 11 years.
Oh my
Um,
God.
but a lot of people do bring their own sofas in or beds, and they'll get the compound to take the ones out that are, you can do that. There's sometimes
Yeah.
a charge, but you can do that. So yeah, if you've got your furniture, then absolutely bring it. But we've always just lived in a way of, oh, we'll be leaving the Middle East next year. Let's not furnish this. And then here we are 11 years later and we're never leaving. So I should
I
probably
love
buy a
this.
sofa.
Yeah, I think you should. I definitely feel like you should invest in a sofa, Frankie. And then what about things like, it sounds really silly, but like making something your own? Are you allowed to paint the walls and wrap the kitchen, for example?
Yeah, yeah. So you just have to leave it as any rental property really, as you found it eventually. But
Yeah.
for example, in our villas, there's not a lot of storage. So people have built in under the stairs storage, and then actually when they've gone to leave, the compound have said, oh, actually just keep that
Yeah,
because
we
that's
quite
quite
like
a
that.
good selling point, yeah, for the next person in. So a lot of the changes have been kept, but like for example, that my neighbours have painted one wall like a really gorgeous navy blue. Like you can definitely customize.
Okay, love that. And then my final question for you on accommodation and finding accommodation is buying. Now, the rental market is very hot in Dubai, but the buying market is humongous, and I feel like so many people are converting from renting to buying here in Dubai at the moment. What is the market like to buy in Saudi? Are you able to do that yet?
So no, as it stands, no. So expats can't buy in the region unless they have, not in the region, in Saudi, unless they have effectively like what you guys have, the golden visa, like a residence visa. So
Yeah.
we've all started to apply for them now. And as they start to come through, that will give us the opportunity to buy here, which is
Wow.
amazing and so exciting. So that's a big change. Also, there's elements, it's a lot of grey, blurred lines at the moment because obviously it's not all started really yet and all very new. But I've also been told that you can buy here, but you cannot rent it. You have to live in
Live
it.
in it.
So there's lots of different loopholes and ways to do it. But for now, I don't know any expats that have bought here that's not married to a Saudi, for example. I've got two girlfriends that are Brits, but they're married to Saudis and they've bought because they're obviously married to Saudis. So I think for us expat couples, it's not smooth sailing just yet, but it's
Okay.
coming.
And would you buy, do you think, if you were here for the long
100%.
term?
100%. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So
So
interesting.
for me, I kick myself. I didn't have any money 30 years ago, to be honest, but I kick myself that I love the people that they say they have their villas on the Palm, on one of the Are they called Frongs or Fronds?
Fronds.
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 One of those. And they bought it, 30 years ago, and now they're like living their best life. I'm like, oh my God, genius. I'm so jealous. If we can do that here, I'll be so happy. If we can find the area that we can buy it now and in 30 years we'll be on a front, then I'm living my best life. Like that's the goal. So yeah, we'd love to buy here if we could, or if not, maybe buying in Dubai or Abu Dhabi and renting it out there. But obviously putting your money into Saudi is probably a really good
Yeah,
investment when we can.
I agree. I agree. Thank you. Oh my God, my words. Thank you so much, Frankie. And last piece of tip or advice on finding accommodation. What is it going to be?
I would say utilize, like I say, the Instagrams, like Saudi Life Unpacked, and there's an amazing lady, I think she's called the Expat Adventures. She also talks about like the expat compounds, just trying to find those accounts that will really show you what it's like to be in them. Because I think when you're moving here, you can look online, Google 10 compounds, for example, and
Yeah.
you go on, you think, but that doesn't show me what it's like to walk around with a pram or what it's like to be there at the weekends or, the facilities. It just doesn't give that. So try and find some accounts that you can follow that will show a real life in a compound community. And also, like I say, get here, run around them all, go around as many as you can. Cordoba, start in Cordoba, have a look in this area, but there's so many opening all around, and just get round
Yeah.
and really be quite pushy.
Yeah, I love that. You've got to have a bit of pushiness in you, don't you, to get to get
Yeah,
into these compounds from the sounds of things. And then, Frankie, for
yeah.
anyone who wants to reach out and ask you any questions, where can they find you on Instagram?
So I am at Frankie with an IE Hilton X on Instagram.
Thank you so much, Frankie. Until next week.
Yay!